Dr. Oz just dropped a bombshell that has Tim Walz scrambling. The Trump administration is launching a full-scale audit of Minnesota's Medicaid program, targeting 14 specific programs the Walz own administration has admitted are problematic. But here's where it gets really interesting. Dozens of fake healthcare providers are allegedly operating out of single addresses, funneling hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars overseas. Now, it's not just about government waste. It's about the systematic fraud under Walz's watch. We're talking about hundreds of millions of your tax dollars allegedly being stolen through shell companies masquerading as healthcare providers. The investigation reveals multiple businesses providing identical services from the same buildings, many appearing to be completely fake operations. For Minnesota taxpayers, this means their state budget is about to take a massive hit when the federal government claws back fraudulent Medicaid payments. For Democrats nationwide, this exposes the corruption that flourishes under their policies. And for America, it shows what happens when we don't properly oversee government programs. Our money gets shipped overseas while Americans struggle. And speaking of national security threats to our resources, we do have some breaking news. On January 5th, 2026, the U.S. Department of Energy announced $2.7 billion in contracts to restore domestic uranium enrichment capabilities. This is not just government spending, it's a declaration of intent. See, America needs uranium. It needs domestic uranium, and it needs it right now. The U.S. consumes, if you didn't know, about 50 million pounds of uranium annually. But did you know it only produces less than 5% domestically? See, we've been dependent on foreign sources, including Russia, for decades, and that ends now. Atomic Minerals Corporation, what are they doing? They're positioned at the epicenter of this uranium renaissance. You see, they're not another mining company. They're America's uranium security solution with proven deposits and strategic positioning. They are ready to fuel America's energy independence. So while politicians like Walz let taxpayer money disappear overseas, companies like Atomic Minerals are bringing critical resources back home. This is about more than mining. It is about American sovereignty, because real security starts with controlling our own resources, unlike Minnesota's missing Medicaid millions. So before you go, make sure you check out the full briefing that we have prepared for you. They prepared it. It is at the link in the description. Now, let's get back to the investigation here. It shows a reporter after reporter, trying to access these alleged healthcare facilities, only to find locked doors, empty offices, and businesses that exist only on paper. One building alone housed 22 different home healthcare providers, all providing identical services. And when confronted, the few people found on site refused to comment and quickly flee. This is not incompetence. This appears to be organized fraud on an industrial scale. Now, Donald Trump posts a video of Dr. Oz warning Tim Walz that every Medicaid bill is about to get audited. Check this out.
Alerting him to something he probably fears. We have just sent a letter to Governor Walz alerting him to something he probably fears and should have taken action in a timely manner to avoid. We are auditing all of the Medicaid bills, in particular for the 14 programs that he and his own administration have admitted were problems, and we're going to claw that money back from the Medicaid monies that they'll be getting. Now, this is a major problem for the state because they've got to own the fact that they have been bilking the federal taxpayer for their sloppy behavior for years.
It's all coming to a head now. Trump's warning about Medicaid audits is not political theater. There's a massive fraud scandal brewing in Minnesota that is exploding. Dozens of fake Medicare providers operating out of a single address, accused of stealing hundreds of millions in tax dollars. Critics claim is being funneled to Somalia. Nick Shirley.
Left, and we headed over to the next building that had 22 of the same home health care providers operating from inside of the building.
Right here you have multicultural home care. And right here it says it's open, but can't even get in. Another Reliance Recovery Center. Mercy and Grace Care, Inc. Right here you have Den Eritrean Youth Development Association of Minnesota. Another child care center. Welcome to Bright Beginning Center. But what do you guys think about the fraud that's taking place here in Minnesota?
Sorry. No comments. Can I please?
Right here you have Serenity Quality Care. All of these businesses are literally the same type of business providing the same service in the same building. Another convenience, home healthcare, aid, Inc., and child-friendly space. All these companies get money from the government. Why would you have the same company essentially inside of the same building, door to door? Right here, Queenly Home Healthcare. It just does not make sense. If you're trying to operate a business, you'd want to have less competition. But here, they have all of their competition right next door. We're wondering, because we hear there's lots of fraud taking place here in Minnesota, and we're wondering, why is there so many of the same companies inside of this same building?
No, I don't know that.
What do you think about the fraud that's taking place here in Minnesota?
I don't have any idea about that fraud, okay? That's it.
What do you think about the news articles and what's being spread on the news about the fraud?
Right now, you are doing something wrong.
I'm just asking you
No, you
about
don't
the
have to
fraud.
ask me, okay? Don't ask me that question again.
Okay.
Okay?
Who can I speak to?
Yeah?
Who can I speak to? Okay. As soon as you confront them about the fraud, they get angry. When these people have these home healthcare companies, you're seeing them everywhere inside this building. What kind of fraud are they committing?
So there's false documentation being submitted to the state of Minnesota for services never provided. They're having forms signed in advance for services that were then never rendered. As far as a year or 2 years in advance, they'll have someone sign these forms at one sitting, and then they just file those with the state of Minnesota, and nobody from the state of Minnesota bothers to check that those services were ever provided.
So they're essentially just using people saying that they had these services provided months or even years ago, then filing the paperwork and then receiving money from the government.
Right, and the Somali community is a very closed community, so everybody's in on it, and they don't want to talk, as you can see.
And for this building, I'm going to give an estimate of around $30 million for how much fraud is taking place. That is a very low estimate. However, still a lot of money in fraud.
And do you think there is fraud taking place here?
I don't know. Yeah.
Do you have any idea what any of these businesses are doing?
I never ask.
I never ask. And that's, of course, is the main problem here. It's not about fake providers stealing money. It's about Governor Walz's administration turning a blind eye to hundreds of millions in taxpayer theft. President Trump details his phone call with Tim Walz and Mayor Frey. We had some good talks. I had Jacob Frey, Governor Walz, great calls. What we need is their criminals. Let's see if we have the audio.
I had two very good talks. I had Jacob Frey and I had Governor Walz, and I mean they were great calls. So let's see how they report it. But they were very nice calls, very respectful.
So is there a possibility, President Trump, of some type of compromise? I read that some of the Guard will be leaving the state of Minnesota, some type of compromise to, I guess, make those guys feel like they're in charge, even though, God help us.
Yeah, well, we'll I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think so. What we need is their criminals. You know, they have criminals, and all I said, just give us your criminals. And if you give us the criminals, it all goes away. They're there to pick up murders. I don't know if you saw, but it was a couple of days ago announced that crime is the lowest in the history of our country, the recorded history of our country.
Wow.
That's a big statement. That's because of us. That's because we go into cities and towns. Usually we're embraced. Sometimes we're not. Chicago is like pulling teeth with Pritzker and with the mayor of Chicago, low IQ person. And usually we're embraced, but sometimes we're not. And when we're not, it just makes it harder.
I love when he takes digs at Brandon Johnson and Jelly Belly Pritzker. Well, Trump is making diplomatic calls about cooperation. The pressure is mounting on frauds, on Walz as the fraud intensifies. The fraud investigation intensifies. Here we have Tim Walz tells every American to stop looking at the fraud.
Fraud thing happens in every state. We had it here. I take responsibility for it. No one in state government had anything to do with it, but people stole from us. You got to stop that. We're working hand in hand with the U.S. Attorney's Office. That's gone now. I don't even know who over there is working on fraud. And we got folks, you come in here, that U.S. attorney sat right here, and I said, there's two people that want to fix this more than anybody in this state, me and you. What do you need from me?
Yeah, we need you in prison. Tim Walz says the billions in fraud that rob Minnesota happens in every state. Walz's deflection strategy of claiming it happens everywhere is backfiring as lawmakers demand accountability for Minnesota's specific failures. And we have Rand Paul opposing the $5 billion for refugee assistance programs that's buried in this bill.
A lot of news reports about the fraud occurring in Minnesota. I think it makes people mad. It makes me mad. And then I see in the appropriation bills that all the people who are going on television squawking about this are now voting to give another $5 billion to these programs. You can't just say, oh, we'll have better people next time and we're going to send people to Minnesota to clean it up. Yes, we should try to do that. But the way you clean it up is you give them less money. And really, I think at this point, there's so much fraud in these programs that I would zero out the refugee programs. Does that mean no refugees? No. If churches and people want to bring refugees and they welcome them to this country and they come legally, they should pay for them. Charity's when you give your own money. It's not charity to bring people in and then have billions of dollars taken from the taxpayer. So I think all refugees that come to this country should not get any welfare. Doesn't mean they can't get assistance. Churches and individuals should help them, but shouldn't be any government assistance because I think it becomes a beacon to an entire group of people. You know, look, half of Somalia seems to have come to Minnesota. So I think the way you stop that is you have to stop these refugee programs. And I think it points out some hypocrisy on the Republican part that on the one hand, they're all, oh, we need to do something, we need to do something. And then they're going to fund another bill with $5 billion more for refugee programs, refugee welfare, essentially.
Yeah, that's the main problem. Senator Paul's legislative response shows the fraud scandal is now driving federal policy decisions about refugee assistance programs. The press secretary detailing President Trump's call with Walz.
That's why President Trump spoke with Governor Walz directly this morning, and he has outlined a clear and simple path to restoring law and order in Minnesota. Number one, Governor Walz, Mayor Fry, and all Democrat leaders should turn over all criminal illegal aliens currently incarcerated in their prisons and jails to federal authorities, along with any illegal aliens with active warrants or known criminal histories for immediate deportation. Number two, state and local law enforcement must agree to turn over all illegal aliens who are arrested by local police. And then thirdly, local police must assist federal law enforcement in apprehending and detaining illegal aliens who are wanted for crimes, especially violent crimes. If Governor Walz and Mayor Fry implement these common sense cooperative measures that I will add have already been implemented in nearly every single other state across the country, Customs and Border Patrol will not be needed to support ICE on the ground in Minnesota. ICE and local law enforcement can peacefully work together, as they are effectively doing in so many other states and jurisdictions. Additionally, President Trump is calling on the United States Congress to immediately pass legislation ending sanctuary cities once and for all. American cities should be safe sanctuaries for law-abiding citizens only, not for dangerous illegal alien criminals who broke our nation's laws and do not belong here. We hope Governor Walz will do the right thing and continue to work with President Trump to keep the American people safe following their call this morning. Americans overwhelmingly want exactly what President Trump is delivering: strong borders and strict immigration enforcement against the worst illegal aliens, of which there are still hundreds of thousands to deport from the interior of our country. The most peaceful way to carry out this vital public safety mission is for Republicans and Democrats to do it together, and for state and local law enforcement to work together with federal law enforcement. We want to let cops be cops. You wouldn't know this continues to be a very popular policy position from the biased media coverage over the course of the last few days, but polling shows huge support for this exact thing President Trump is calling for. More than 80% of Americans favor deporting illegal aliens convicted of violent crimes. A country unable to deport criminals who enter it illegally is no country at all. The open borders agenda of Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, and the Democrats was already on the ballot on November 5th, 2024, and it was resoundingly rejected. President Trump will never back down from his promise to deport violent criminal illegal aliens and make America safe again, and he welcomes all cooperation in that effort.
And President Trump is leading that charge. That was the press secretary. The White House offering Walz a way out through cooperation, but the fraud allegations are not going to go away. Here's the president on rooting out the fraud.
So in Minnesota, they think it's $19 billion. If they think it's $19 billion, triple it or quadruple it. And if we catch a lot of this fraud, and I felt it for a long time, but now we know what's happening. And the answer is, yeah, there will be accountability. It's one of the little problems. You know, I happen to think, and I've said it from the beginning, that a lot of what's going on with respect to Minneapolis, you know, with what's happening with all the hoopla, is so people don't talk about.
You think it's a distraction?
I've said it from day one. It's a distraction because what you don't see is that we have hundreds of accountants from Todd and from all of the different people. We have hundreds of accountants going over everything that's happening, and we're finding fraud on top of fraud on top of fraud. And I think that they don't want that to happen. You're talking about $19 billion. Probably that's a minimal number. Now, you take that and you go to California. You think California is better? I would say California is worse. It's totally out of control. They don't know what they're doing out there.
California is the next domino to fall. Trump's estimate of potentially $19 billion in fraud and his promise of accountability puts enormous pressure on Walz to respond. Representative Chip Roy went on Sean Hannity and had this to say about Governor Walz. Buckle up, folks.
Let's get your take on everything that's been unfolding in Minnesota, and but more importantly, I think I'm the only one that's out here saying, excuse me, this demonization of federal law enforcement agents that are doing their job and arresting the worst of the worst, has contributed to this. It has whipped people, into a frenzy, and these confrontations with law enforcement officials now. This is a predictable outcome if this is what elected officials are going to do.
Sean, you're exactly right. When I went on Fox on Saturday evening after these events unfolded, and obviously they're tragic events, and we don't want them to occur, as you said in your opening monologue. And the fact is, this environment was created by Governor Walz, by the leadership of the city of Minneapolis, by the radical leftists across the country, Democratic colleagues in Congress, who have been saying absurd things like you just noted, where Walz said, ICE is not law enforcement. They have undermined the whole ability of ICE to be able to do what they're supposed to do under the law, under the Constitution, to secure communities and to work with local law enforcement to root out the worst offenders. You rattled off a list. There are dozens of examples, probably hundreds of the people.
No, there are hundreds and hundreds that they've arrested inside of Minnesota. Hundreds, thousands, actually, if you want the full list.
And the worst list of offenders, we're talking about child sodomy, rape, murder, dangerous individuals that are on those lists of the people they pulled from Minneapolis alone, Minnesota, the entire state, much less the rest of the country. And they are the ones that need to understand their culpability in creating the environment of what happened, both with the woman in the car as well as the man on the street this weekend. And the reality is, right now, I applaud President Trump. I applaud his leadership. Sending Tom Homan to Minneapolis is a very smart move. Tom is a seasoned professional, former head of ICE. He was given, they forget this, by the way, Sean, he was given a medal by Barack Obama for his service in securing this country as the head of ICE. And of course, now they vilify him and they demonize him. And Tom's going to go there and he's going to work to try to settle things down, do this all the right way, but for us to stay on target, for us to continue to finish the job. We've got to continue to undo the damage of the Biden-Mayorkas years. It is what the American people sent President Trump to Washington to do. We've got to continue to deliver and do it the right way. And we cannot let Democrats defund ICE and defund Homeland Security, which they're threatening to do this coming Friday. We did our job to fund it. And by the way, if they do that, they will also be threatening to defund our men and women in uniform and our great patriotic military that carried out that great removal of Maduro in Venezuela.
But the bottom line is, this started a long time ago. I think something has got to change in this country. And I have raised this question many, many times, if you are a sanctuary city or a sanctuary state, by the very definition, you are aiding and abetting in law breaking. Yep. And the only thing that I can think of, short of arresting elected officials, which I guess that probably wouldn't be acceptable to people, but they are aiding and abetting.
No, they should
And
arrest
then
them.
if you want to know why
Gone.
California is broke with the highest income taxes, sales taxes, gas taxes, corporate taxes, the reason is because all of their money go to all of the services they're providing illegal immigrants, everything from healthcare to education and welfare. And again, all that money is coming from the hardworking taxpayers of California, and then they have billions and billions of dollars, tens of billions in budget deficits every year in spite of all those high taxes.
Well, that's right, Sean. I mean, there are multiple points to what you're getting at, but the most important of which is these elected leaders that are thwarting our federal law enforcement from doing their job. And look, you and I are both believers in ensuring that our states and the people aren't being interfered with by an overbearing federal government, right? We believe that. But the Constitution says that the federal government has primacy on immigration and dealing with our border enforcement, and therefore ICE, Border Patrol, are supposed to be able to work directly with local law enforcement to enforce the law. Virtually every city in America is working with local law enforcement, at least to a degree. The local law enforcement is working with ICE to carry out and effectuate what we're doing. But a handful of blue jurisdictions, and in particular and notably Minneapolis, are not. But it is an organized effort. And by the way, there's lots of information coming out about the lieutenant governor, about others in Minnesota that have been directly in coordination with the signal chats, with the coordinated efforts of Antifa, trying to foment the, quote, resistance, which, by the way, this man wasn't down at a protest. He was down directly interfering with law enforcement carrying out their job to remove a dangerous illegal alien. And that's what's happening across the country. The American people don't want that. They want us to enforce the law. They want us to do it the right way. And these NGOs that are funding it, the flow of all the money through all of these organized efforts, and you and I have talked about that before. It's not just Antifa. It's not just George Soros. It's the whole thing. It's the Wren Collective. It's the entire group of organized dollars flowing through and federal and state dollars that are going to these sanctuary jurisdictions, which, by the way, the president is right, we should end.
All right, quick.
Oh, man. Chip Roy nailing it. Congressional Republicans now directly blaming Walz' leadership for creating the environment that has enabled this massive fraud. Tim Walz suggests it's all make-believe, though.
In this fraud investigation and the reason that they're here, is there anything you think, when you look back, you could have done differently to prevent them from showing up and doing what they're doing here?
No, they were coming anyway. It was all make-believe that we'd been at it. Every state had this. And look, I do think there has to be accountability in this. No one in state government was implicated. This happens all over. People did this. We got it caught. We put them in jail or whatever.
Oh, my goodness. It's all make-believe. In the land of Minnesota, Walz claims the fraud is make-believe, is about to be demolished by explosive new revelations about who knew what and when. Not only did Amy Bach, the woman behind the $250 million fraud scandal, confirm Walz and Ellison knew, but Ellison met with Somali fraudsters who were under investigation.
And a Fox News alert also in Minnesota. The convicted ringleader of one of the state's biggest fraud schemes is speaking to Fox News from behind bars. Now, she believes that the scam was no surprise to local Democratic leaders, and she's naming names. She spoke to Alexis McAdams. Hi, Alexis.
Hey, Dana. Yes. When you look at the state of Minnesota, right, there seems to be another fraud scam. So this one involves Amy Bach. She's a Minnesota woman convicted of fraud for taking taxpayer money that was meant to feed hungry kids. But listen to this. Bach tells me the real issue here is the state of Minnesota, which she says kept giving scammers your taxpayer money even after they were flagged as fraudsters.
I have to believe that the governor's office and Keith Ellison's office were aware of this. They've said they were involved in helping the FBI. They've said they were made aware. But apparently I'm scary, so they couldn't do anything.
So Bach ran this nonprofit called Feeding Our Future. You might have heard of it. It was one of dozens convicted in this $250 million scam. You can see her mugshot there. Prosecutors say this group set up sham restaurants. They pretended they were making these meals. They got paid by the state for those meals, but they just pocketed the cash. Bach, who's looking at 30 years behind bars, tells me the state signed off on those businesses, not her.
It all went through a process. They were all approved. They were all paid by the state, yet all the fingers are being pointed at me.
And it's not just Bach. Whistleblowers told a congressional committee Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison there ignored warnings for years as millions of dollars and millions were stolen on their watch. Congress is investigating a long list of massive fraud schemes in the state. It's hard to keep up. Prosecutors say it's led to at least $9 billion in fraud, Dana, and counting. Congress also asking why the Attorney General there would meet with a group of Somali fraudsters, which were under FBI investigation in 2021. The group can be heard in an audio clip given to us by Bach's lawyer offering to donate to his campaign if he can help them get their funding flowing again. Ellison denies any wrongdoing here. He slammed Bach in a statement to Fox, calling her a liar, a manipulator, adding now she's on a media tour to deflect her guilt onto others instead of finally taking responsibility for this fraud scheme that she ran. So we reached out to Governor Walz too, Dana. He didn't get back to us. House Republicans say it's just getting started. They want to subpoena Walz and Ellison because they say they're responsible for ripping off American taxpayers.
Yeah. Now the jailbirds are singing. The bombshell revelation that Walz and Ellison allegedly knew about the fraud, and that Ellison met with the fraudsters, changes everything. But all it took was a phone call with Trump for Walz to bend the knee. It should have happened on day one. Every other Democrat governor should follow along.
You are now under arrest. Please sit down and wait for instruction.
I'm at level 12 news.
I can't hear you.
I'm at level 12 news. BG on the scene. I've just pressed.
You don't have any press?
I don't. I can show you.
All right, why don't you move out there, okay? Just get out there. Stay outside the line, okay? Coming out. Coming out.
They have made multiple arrests.
Shameful. But those people are now finally facing law. So here's the kicker. While Walz was busy being Kamala's running mate, his state was hemorrhaging taxpayer money through what appears to be sophisticated fraud schemes. Dr. Oz isn't just auditing bills, he's exposing a system that allowed fake businesses to steal from American taxpayers for years. The federal government is about to claw back those fraudulent payments, leaving Minnesota holding the bag. See, this is what America First governance looks like. Actual accountability instead of endless excuses. While Trump's team hunts down every fraudulent dollar, Walz is probably wondering how much of this will stick to him personally. The evidence is mounting, the audits are coming, and the American people are about to see exactly where their tax dollars have been going under Democrat leadership. Minnesota taxpayers are going to pay twice, once for the original fraud, and again when the feds demand their money back. Do you think Walz should be held personally accountable for this massive fraud under his administration? Let us know in the comments. And while you're there, check out the Next News merch shop for gear that shows you stand with America First policies that actually protect taxpayer dollars.
The system controls information. Information control is power. I don't want you to see this. Truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now.